So who's the best college football coach this year in the Pac-12? Or more importantly, who's the worst college football coach in the Pac-12 this year? Let's find out. Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yep, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, live for you. On LouTube today. Thanks for watching, and I really appreciate it also. And two, if you're new around here, go ahead and subscribe. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year. We're doing Pac-12 week this week. I'm doing 5 videos about nothing but the Pac-12. I'm dedicating a full week to each of the 5 major conferences. I've already done a couple of the conferences. I'll put some links up here during the video if you want to check those other conferences out. If the Pac-12 is something you're interested in, or you enjoy this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And let's get into it. I'm going to rank the Pac-12 coaches today. Should I rank them from best to worst or worst to first? We'll rank them from worst to best. I think that's the way I did it with the other 2 conferences. So we'll start at 12, and we'll work our way all the way down to number 1. Let me know in the comment section down below what I get wrong in this video. If I have a coach ranked too high or too low, let me know. Give me your list down there if you want to rank them, or just tell me who you think the best or the worst coach in the Pac-12 is if you don't want to list them all. But anyway, let's get started with the worst coach in the Pac-12. Okay, I really don't see how there can be any disagreement or argument here with who I have picked last, 12th head coaches in the Pac-12, but I'm sure somebody will find a way to disagree. But Herm Edwards. Has there been a more head-scratching hire at a major college football program in the last 10 or 15 years? I honestly can't think of one. I mean, Herm Edwards, you're talking about a guy here that hasn't coached at all in almost 10 years, right? He's been an analyst for ESPN since 2009. He's never been a head coach in college. He was a longtime NFL coach where, let's be real, he wasn't that good. He had a losing record in the NFL, and I get it. Being good or bad in the NFL doesn't necessarily mean you'll then be good or bad in college. But most coaches who try the NFL or do the college and NFL thing have done college first. Maybe they go to the NFL, it doesn't work out, and come back. I'm thinking Steve Spurrier, Nick Saban. They didn't do that well in the NFL either, but they were proven winners at the college level. This guy, Herm Edwards, has never coached a game. He's 130-something years old, losing record in the NFL, been an analyst since 2009. And the strangest thing, really, about this hire is it seems a little fishy. The athletic director there at Arizona State, I'm drawing a blank on his name. If there's any Arizona State fans watching, you'll know who it is. But the athletic director at Arizona State, before he was an athletic director at Arizona State, was an agent. Guess who one of his clients was? Herm Edwards. So it seems a little weird that 10, 15, 20 years down the road, an athletic director at Arizona State would go ahead and hire his former agent to be the head coach at his football program, a head coach, like I said, who has 0 college football experience and wasn't all that good in the NFL. Yes, we all, Herm Edwards, we know you play to win the game. We know, we get that. That's great. Mark Richt can probably write that down. That would be a great lesson for him to learn. Yes, that is the reason you play, to win the game. Forget all these life lessons and turning boys into men and all this kind of, we get all that. But listen, the first line on a head coach's contract says win games. That's your primary goal. So thank you for straightening that out for some other head coaches who may have needed to hear that, Herm. But I just don't understand this hire at all, and for that reason, I have to have it dead last here on this list. All right, up next, that brings us to number 11. Oregon State head coach Jonathan Smith. I know what you're thinking. Who the hell is this guy? I don't know. Nobody knows. This guy, let's just be real. Oregon State is a toilet program. They were one of the worst teams in America last year. Definitely one of the worst in the Power 5. Just awful. Head coach Anderson, whatever his name was, quit midway through the season. And Oregon State was a terrible team. They hired this guy. I guess one good thing if you want to say about this guy, if you're an Oregon State fan, he did play there. So sort of like a hometown hero type thing. Former player comes back to try to drag the carcass that is the Oregon State football program out of the depths of hell where it's been relegated to recently and try to turn them into something relevant. Hopefully they'll give this guy a few years to try to turn it around, because Oregon State is really, really bad. So maybe with this guy having played there or whatever, that'll garner some goodwill from the fans or something. They can give this guy a few years to see what he can do. But, I mean, no one knows who the hell this guy is. He could easily be dead last on this list just because you really don't know. But anyway, he is where he is here on Uncle Lou's list. All right, now we get into the top 10 here, and coming in at the top of the top 10 list, number 10, Mario Cristobal, head coach, Oregon. Another head-scratching hire here. I sort of get why they did it. Oregon liked Taggart, and I have a feeling that the powers that be at Oregon had a feeling they were going to be able to hold on to Willie Taggart for a while. Of course, that didn't work out. He bolted. He's in Tallahassee now, Florida State. Mario Cristobal was an assistant under Willie Taggart. He's 0-1. He coached the bowl game and lost. Can't judge anything off of that. But, I mean, let's just be real. The guy's got another guy with no head coaching experience getting a major Power 5 job. You have to ask yourself why. Really, the only reason Oregon did this, I think, was to try to save their recruiting class from last year. That's one of the best things about Willie Taggart is his recruiting ability. He was lining up a great class at Oregon last year, and Oregon hired this guy from within, Mario Cristobal, because the recruits were familiar with him in an effort to try to hold on to as many of those recruits as they possibly could. This hire could go either way. Oregon's had some success in the past. Of course, that coach at a different Pac-12 school now. We'll get to him in a little bit further down this list. But anyway, Oregon is, I mean, it's been proven Oregon is a place where you can win, right? With the right philosophy, with the right players, with the right coach. So we'll see. This is another, like where do you put this guy on the list? There's just not a huge body of work to go off of here. So, you know, I could see people making a list that has this guy a couple of spots higher on the list. I could see a list made by somebody who puts him a couple of spots lower. Hard to argue one way or the other, really. All right, number 9 on the list, Colorado head coach Mike McIntyre, whatever the hell his name is. Now, you could argue this guy is a little too high at 9. Maybe he should be 10 or 11 or whatever, but he did win his division. Not this past season, but what was that? I guess 2016. He went 10-4, won the division. Now, it sort of fell off the map this year, going 5-7, 2-7, I think it was, in the Pac-12. So again, a guy that's been at Colorado for a few years, not an impressive overall record, but he did win the division, like I mentioned, just 2 seasons ago. So hard to bump him above or below any of the guys we've already talked about, I think. So I think this is a fair spot to have him at. But another program that sort of just hovers around mediocrity. You never really expect that much out of Colorado, which makes it, I guess, even more impressive that he was able to win a division and make it to a Pac-12 title game a couple of years ago. 5-7 last year. We'll see if he gets it turned around and gets closer back to that 10-win mark from a couple of years ago rather than the 5-win mark from last year. So, you know, I don't know. But anyway, there he is on the Uncle Lou list for you. All right, up next here, Mike Leach. Now, one of my favorite coaches in the entire Power 5, but it has nothing to do with his head coaching ability. It has everything to do with his press conferences and his post-game antics and his rants about aliens and the moon and pirates and all that kind of stuff. I think has about a 500 record, I think, at Wazoo. But really has been sort of a disappointment. I mean, if you look at Mike Price, right, also at Wazoo before Leach got there, Mike Price was winning 10 games a year multiple times, made a couple of Rose Bowls. Mike Leach has never reached that at Washington State. Terrible in bowl games. You know, he runs one of these weird, quirky type offenses. And I guess when teams have a couple of weeks or more to sort of study what he's doing, it's hard for Mike Leach to beat him. I think he's 1-4 in bowl games up there at Wazoo. So he hasn't done anything impressive. He's one of these guys that gets talked about all the time because of his quirky personality, his quirky nature, or whatever. Now, this was the guy I wanted Tennessee to hire without question because I wasn't concerned at all about his coaching ability, and it would have been great to have a head coach like this in the SEC just for press conference purposes, for post-game interview purposes, especially after we lost Lyle last year at Tennessee. He was sort of the court jester of the SEC. You could always count on Lyle to say something ignorant in a press conference or to say something just totally off the wall with the life champions and brick by brick and all this kind of stuff. You could always count on that. I was hoping Tennessee would replace that with Mike Leach so we could keep that going. But down here in the SEC, we're going to have to find another coach this year to keep us entertained. Mike Leach did stay at Washington State. But there he is on this list of Uncle Lou's Pac-12 coaches. All right, and that brings us to number 7 on the list, Justin Wilcox, head coach, Cal. This one's sort of a weird one. A head coach for 1 year, 5-7, but Cal was a terrible program when he got there. But it's sort of a weird thing going on there where I think his offensive coordinator is actually a better and more coveted and highly sought-after coach than Justin Wilcox is. What I had to write down this coordinator's name. What was it? Bo Baldwin. Yeah, Bo Baldwin came from, where'd he come from? Eastern Washington, I believe it was. But anyway, he's one of the hot young names, one of the hot young offensive geniuses or whatever. Justin Wilcox has him as offensive coordinator there at Cal. And there was some talk this offseason and towards the end of last year that somebody may take him from there. And give him a head coaching job somewhere. And I do think that will happen pretty soon, maybe even after this year. But 5-7 last year, he was able to hold on to Baldwin at the offensive coordinator position, held on to his defensive coordinator too. So got some consistency going forward into year 2. We'll see if they can build on the 5-7 record. This guy's kind of like the new coach. It's hard to judge off of 1 year, especially when you inherit a toilet bowl program like Cal. So we'll see what he does in year 2. All right, number 6, I have Kevin Sumlin, head coach, Arizona, and I struggled with this name. I had him as high as 4 at one point when I was working on this list. I had him as low as 8, but here he is. Kevin Sumlin, of course, comes to Utah from Texas A&M. Things really took a turn for the worst there last year for Sumlin. The fans weren't happy with the team's performance on the field for obvious reasons, but then you had a lot of racial type stuff start going on there, and it just became really an untenable situation for Sumlin there in College Station. The writing was on the wall at the beginning of last season, really, that he was going to be gone, and Texas A&M did go ahead and make a change, bringing in Jimbo Fisher from Florida State. Sumlin goes on out to Arizona. Now, it's going to be interesting to see what happens here, because if you look at what Sumlin did at Texas A&M, of course, he was at Houston, had an amazing year with Houston that springboarded into the job at Texas A&M, and he had some success there his first couple of years with somebody else's players. But if you look at his last 4 years at Texas A&M, he had a losing record in the SEC, crumbled in the second half of the season almost every single year. Well, if you look at Arizona, of course, they have Khalil Tate, one of the most exciting players in college football, and he sort of reminds you a little bit of a Johnny Manziel type player, a run around, make stuff happen, scramble, throw, pass, combination type things. I think it's possible that he shows up here in Arizona and actually gets it turned around pretty quick, which is one of the reasons I decided to have him where I do on the list as opposed to a couple of spots worse, because I think Sumlin has an opportunity to have some early success here at Arizona. Now, the question is going to be 2, 3, 4 years down the road, can he sustain that success? Because he wasn't able to do it at Texas A&M. Yes, I know playing in the SEC West is totally different than playing in the Pac-12 South, but I think the analogy is worth mentioning. He shows up at Texas A&M, he gets Johnny Manziel, he has some success with other people's players. 4 years in, he's got all his own players. He's got losing records in the SEC. Arizona, not a very good team. Very exciting player in Khalil Tate. We'll see. Can he sort of recreate the success he had his first couple of years at Texas A&M with Johnny Manziel? Can he replicate that at Arizona this year with Khalil Tate? We'll see. Now, if they come out and win, 9 or 10 games this year, then this is a guy who's going to be moving higher up on this list next year. So we'll keep an eye on it and see what happens. But there he is on this year's UNCLELOU Pac-12 coaching list, Kevin Sumlin. All right, number 5, Southern Cal, Clay Helton. I struggled with this one too, and I'm going to tell you, I think, one of the reasons why. I was hoodwinked and bamboozled, I think, by this guy. I was real high on Clay Helton a couple of years ago as one of these newer type coaches that I thought was going to have a lot of success, and it just hasn't panned out. Now, they did finally win the Pac-12 last year, which is great, but then, they turn around and take a beating to, Ohio State in their bowl game. They really haven't been close to elite since Clay Helton has been there. And it's kind of a head scratcher too, because they consistently have the most talented team in the Pac-12. You can look down the roster top to bottom, and I would argue they're more talented than Stanford on any given year, Washington on any given year, any other team you want to name. They have the athletes there. Sam Darnold was in the conversation for the Heisman. Really, the last 2 seasons he was at Southern Cal. They did capitalize last year, I guess, with the Pac-12 title. But it just seems like some of the coaches that are going to be coming up on this list that are higher than Helton, I feel like are doing more with less talent, whereas Clay Helton is doing less with more talent, if that makes sense. And I'm not taking anything away from the Pac-12 title, but when you get talent, when your recruiting area is Southern Los Angeles, right, or California in general, and you have a name on your helmet like Southern Cal, it pretty much recruits itself. You're going to have talent up and down that roster. And I don't know, some other coaches on this list, to me, just seem to get more out of their players than what Clay Helton does. But we'll see if they're able to repeat the success from last year and repeat as Pac-12 champs. If so, I may move them up a little higher on this list. All right, at number 4, I have Chip Kelly. Now, all he did was go 46-7 at Oregon and pretty much dominate the Pac-12 the entire time he was there. I've seen lists that have him as the number 1 quarterback, head coach in the Pac-12 this year. And to be honest, this is probably the lowest anybody will have him on any list. And if you've been paying attention to Uncle Lou over the last couple of months and heard me talk about Chip Kelly, then you probably already know why. I'm not convinced that he's going to be able to duplicate or replicate what he did at Oregon at UCLA. And it's nothing against UCLA. I don't think I have questions whether or not he can duplicate and replicate what he did at Oregon anywhere else in America in 2018. When Chip Kelly did what he did at Oregon, no one else was doing that. Yes, there were spread offenses. Yes, there were 5-wide sets. Yes, people were running no huddle. Nobody was running 100 plays a game, okay? Nobody was running a play every 5 or 6 seconds. That did not exist 15 years ago, okay? Now, a ton of teams do it now. Some have borrowed certain aspects of the Chip Kelly system. Other teams have just stolen it outright, and you watch a team play and it almost looks just like Oregon from 10 years ago. So why does that matter? Well, that offense is not sneaking up on anybody anymore in college football. Every team in America, almost, probably every team in America now in 2018 plays at least one team a year who runs that exact offense or one very similar to it. You're not sneaking up on folks anymore, okay? Yet you did. You were scoring 50, 60 points a game, going for 2 for no reason in the first quarter. It was exciting. You had 882 different uniform combinations for no reason. That's great. That's awesome. But I just don't know if you're going to ever be able to get back to that level of success with that style of offense. We'll see. I mean, I could be wrong. UCLA, like Southern Cal, fertile recruiting ground. But it's going to take Chip Kelly a couple of years to get players in to even try to run this system. Don't argue with me. Look at Oregon's offensive line from 8-9 years ago. They averaged 280 a man. Why? A 330-pound tackle is not pancaking a defensive end, then getting up, running 40 yards downfield so that you can snap the ball again 6 seconds later. It's not happening. You need smaller, lighter, faster, quicker, more agile players. So it's going to take a couple of recruiting cycles for Chip Kelly to even get the type of athletes in there he needs, because you're not just talking about finding the right quarterback. It's linemen, it's running backs, it's receivers, it's the whole thing. Same thing goes on defense, because a UCLA defense is going to spend a lot of time on the field because UCLA possessions on offense are going to be so short because of how quick they run their plays. So that's where I have him on my list. I think that's fair given my theory about his style of offense. If other people want to have him a little higher on the list given his past success, I completely understand that, but this is where he falls on the Uncle Lou list. All right, up next, Kyle Whittingham, Utah. Guy's been there 14 years. He's won twice as many games as he lost. That's an accomplishment at Utah. He's the longest tenured coach in the Pac-12. And here's, I mentioned this a couple of coaches ago when I was talking about Clay Helton and getting sort of less with more in terms of Clay Helton. This is a guy that gets the absolute most he can get out of the players he has. Let's be honest and real here. Utah's not recruiting multiple 5-star prospects a year, okay? Very few 4-stars, okay? But they're consistently one of the best teams in the Pac-12. Now, no, have they had a string of years where they've won the Pac-12 title games a bunch of times? No, they haven't. But again, they're Utah, okay? They're Utah. He gets the absolute most, in my opinion, out of the players that he has. You could argue he's the best coach in the Pac-12. That argument could be made. Given the players he has versus the results you see on the field, he gets the absolute most out of what he has to work with. And I feel like this is a fair assessment here for Whittingham to have him where I do. One thing, and I had to write this down, that's what I was looking at, but how is it possible this guy's had 9 different offensive coordinators, right? I don't understand that. You've had 8 different offensive coordinators since 2009. Can you not get along with these people, sir? That's mind-boggling, sir. 8 different offensive coordinators since 2009, 9 different offensive coordinators overall. How about picking an offensive coordinator and stick with it? Now, Utah always has good defense and special teams, but your offense is going to continue to struggle and be inconsistent if the team is having to learn a totally new offense every 1.5 years, which is what they're doing on average here. You've been there 14 years and had 9 different offensive coordinators, sir. What are you doing? Let's get an offensive coordinator and stick with it, man. I mean, if this is the top of the Pac-12 and this is the bottom, Utah's been stuck here since forever and a day with mediocre players and 9 different offensive coordinators. Stick with an offensive coordinator and see if you can't come up to here. All right, and that brings us to the top 2. And these could have went in any order, and a lot of people probably are going to disagree with this, but number 2, Chris Petersen, 37-17 in his time at Washington, been there 4 full years now, so all his players should be in place. This could be the best team Washington has ever had, the team that's coming up this year. You got Jake Browning, 4-year starter, coming back at quarterback. Myles Gaskin going to be his 4th year starting at running back. These are 2 of the best players in the entire Pac-12. You get a ton of talent back on the defensive side of the ball. Chris Petersen, a young, energetic, one of the best coaches in college football. This could potentially be the best season Washington has ever had. What have they done? They've he's won the Pac-12 once, right, since he's been there, and won the division once. Is that right? I think that's right. Anything short of a Pac-12 title for Washington this year has to be considered a huge disappointment. You look at their closest competition here is probably going to be Southern Cal and Stanford. Southern Cal loses Darnold, so they're going to be breaking in a new quarterback. It could possibly be a freshman. No reason you should lose to Southern Cal this year. Stanford, yeah, they get Bryce Love back, but Washington is a more talented team right now than Stanford is, and should be able to win that game. But I've got Chris Petersen at number 2. I do think he's a good coach, a hell of a coach. Of course, he came from Boise State, so you know he's used to sort of turning things around and getting up to the top. Boise State can't get to the top; they're not Power 5. But he took Boise State as high as they could possibly go. Gets a job at Washington, 37-17 since he's got there. He's done a great job. But if they don't win the Pac, they should have won the Pac-12 last year. They should have won the Pac-12 last year. Had they won the Pac-12 last year, he'd probably be number 1 on this list right now. They were the best team in the Pac-12 last year, and you crapped it away. So don't shoot the messenger. Blame it on whatever you want. Blame it on ESPN. Blame it on the SEC. I don't care what you blame it on. Point is, you went down to Arizona or Arizona State, whatever it was, and you lost a pointless, meaningless game that you had no business losing. That's not on me. That's on you. Chris Petersen, number 2 on the Uncle Lou list. 2018 Pac-12 college football coaches. All right, so you know by now, number 1 on my list, Stanford head coach David Shaw. I've been a fan of this guy forever. Again, if you've been watching me for any amount of time, you know I love David Shaw. I feel like he's an SEC coach stuck on the West Coast. He runs an SEC style of offense over there where a lot of these teams like to spread it out and throw it around. He's a ground and pound type guy with 330-pound linemen. Line up, run it down your throat. I love that kind of football. I think David Shaw is an excellent coach. Took over for Harbaugh. A lot of people thought Stanford would dip off after losing Harbaugh. He's actually elevated them, okay? There's been a total of 7 Pac-12 title games, okay? 7 years since they instituted the Pac-12 title game. Stanford has played in 4 of them and won 3 of them, all right? David Shaw's got twice as many wins as Chris Petersen and only 5 more losses, okay? And he's been there forever. Chris Petersen only been there 4 years, okay? So twice as many wins. Chris Petersen's got 17 losses. David Shaw's only got 22, but he's been there a lot more years than Chris Petersen has, okay? And twice as many wins. That's why he's number 1 on this list. Chris Petersen wants to pass David Shaw. You're either going to have to win 3 Pac-12 titles or you're going to have to win a playoff game or a national title. That's the only thing David Shaw hasn't done at Stanford in the Pac-12. And Stanford is one of these academic schools. It's hard to recruit there. Not any high school athletes able to qualify for Stanford. And while I don't buy into all the crying about, oh, my school can't get kids because of blah, 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 blah. That's your own school's fault to feel that way, but it doesn't change the reality of the situation. Stanford does have some hurdles that some other teams don't have. They got one of the best players in college football coming back this year, Bryce Love. Almost won the Heisman last year. Going to be one of the favorites to win it this year. We'll see. But to me, without question, the best coach in the Pac-12 right now, Stanford head coach David Shaw.
This is what's great about sports. This is what the greatest thing about sports is. You play to win the game. Hello? You play to win the game.